So this is our second experimental outlet within the bigger objective of challenging the status quo of food inflation. As an economy, not just Malaysia, anywhere in the world, the challenge is always to manage inflation. Cost of living is high anywhere in the world. And if you look at our inflation, the biggest basket of goods and services that contribute to inflation every year is food inflation. The raw material is manageable, is the cooked food that is usually twice or sometimes 3 times higher than the inflation of all the other goods and services. And this is even more complicated in our economy because if you look at the spending pattern of the lower household income groups, they spend disproportionately higher on food compared to M40 and especially T20. So government can focus on policy, but that takes a while. That's number one. For example, in order to reduce food inflation, the natural option is to scale up the supply of local food. Even then it is complicated because we don't have the economies of scale, and usually our produce can be more expensive than the ones imported. So that will take some time for us to manage that. But what I feel is missing in our society is the other part of interventions that could have happened much faster, which is number one, consumerism, and number two is the market forces. When it comes to consumerism, while we have consumer groups in the country, we have not been able to really move our society to challenge continuous food inflation. And more often than not, we tend to normalize food increases. If generally the market, the operators say that a cost of coffee is 14 ringgit, we complain about it, but there's hardly any impact on the demand for a 14 ringgit coffee. And because of that, because of slower consumerism activities in the country that challenge and that can challenge the normalization of food inflation, we end up where we are. The other component is the market forces to challenge operators to make sure that there will always be competition that offer better and lower prices. So that's what we are trying to do here. Of course, we cannot operate as a normal business, and one model that we've been looking at through IO Malaysia is how do we convince society and also scale it up so that more people are willing to come together, different parties and different partners, to work on social enterprises. And the difference is that because people who come together and put their capital for a social enterprise like this, the expectation for return is lower because the objective is always social in nature. And secondly, because the expectation for return is lower, then the business should be more cost effective. It can sustain longer, and given all this, it should be able to offer and survive on a much cheaper price band, and that's what we are trying to prove with Kesum today. It offers prices from 5 ringgit, 4 ringgit and below. It's almost 50%, I think, cheaper than what you normally get elsewhere. Of course, the challenge for us is to see if prices are lower, will you get the volume? If you get the volume, then if it's proven to be financially and operationally feasible for the next 2 or 3 months, then it allows us to scale it up as you go along to have more of these outlets all over the place. Because until such a time, where outlets that offer this kind of prices have reached the scale in the market, then you will not be able to provide that market forces that can challenge high prices.